welcome. Tonight on the call, we have quite a few of us. There's myself, Susan Muirhead, Support Services Manager. We're joined by our CEO, Alison Taylor. Good evening, Alison.
Good evening.
Jane Pugh, I think, is having a little technical difficulty, and Jane will be joining us tonight as well. Orda Hughes, who you may have spoken if you've discussed research, is with us as well. And obviously we've got two guest speakers. They're the experts when it comes to this study. So we're joined by Ragada and our colleague Megan, and they'll both discuss their involvement with this fantastic trial. Tonight, our format has changed slightly. If you've joined us in the last couple of years, you're used to do it very much. We do a live meeting. Tonight, we are using a webinar format, so you will be able to view and listen to the presentation. However, asking questions will be slightly different. It won't be in the chat facility that you've maybe used previously. You'll see in the circle here in the green on our screen, it's Q&A. So depending on your device, along the bottom you have a black bar and it's Q&A you're looking for. And in that you can type any questions you have. Please keep them relevant to tonight's topic. We do occasionally get other ones which are off topic. We will try and answer those with you individually in that Q&A session, but they wouldn't be asked to our researchers tonight. If there is anything that crops up, obviously you can contact us at our info@pkdcharity.org.uk. A little medical disclaimer. Tonight we're not talking about PKD and our medical conditions in detail. However, it's just a little disclaimer that we can't discuss any concerns you have about your own health conditions. We can't promote any treatments or recommendations. So it was just a little reminder of that. While we're waiting, just another's coming in. I see there's still more people flooding in. Our next live Q&A session is going to be a week on Thursday, and we're going to look at kidney-related infections in PKD, a pain for many of us, I'm sure. So you can either scan that QR code, or we will be dropping we can use the chat, so we can drop in a little link there. But you will find details on PKD Charity's website of that. So it'd be lovely to see you, a little flurry of you perhaps registering. Again, an early evening presentation lasting approximately an hour or no more. So that's fantastic. I see we now have 100 in our audience tonight. It's great to be out those double figures into treble figures. So what I'd like to do now is hand over to the formal part of our presentation tonight. Welcome, Ragada. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you very much.
I'll stop screen sharing just now.
Good evening, everybody, and it is lovely. My name's Ragada. I'm one of the kidney doctors, and I work as a consultant at the Sheffield Kidney Institute. I was just going to briefly introduce Megan Jones, who's the trials coordinator in Norwich and has really been the sort of backbone of getting this trial off the ground and liaising with numerous centres around the country to get all the regulatory approvals and get them trained and up and running for recruitment. So we've been very lucky to have Megan. So I was going to go through a little bit of background and theory, and I was going to keep it nice and simple, and then talk a little bit about IMPEDE, which centres are participating, and then we can go through sort of some questions and answers. So I thought it might be helpful, as some of you probably might recognise that I've been working with the PKD Charity for a while, actually. So I started working with the PKD Charity in 2016, 2017, and I was very lucky to be supported by the PKD Charity through the DRINK trial, which looked at high water intake as a way of slowing down kidney cyst growth in polycystic kidney disease. I've worked again with the PKD Charity developing a pain assessment tool that's specific to PKD. And you can see that over the years, I've been sharing some of the work that we've done together at the American Society of Nephrology, Kidney Research UK, who supported my fellowship, and UK Kidney Week. So every trial has to have a very sexy short name. So this is IMPEDE-PKD, and the rather boring long title is Implementation of Metformin Therapy to Ease the Decline of Kidney Function in Polycystic Kidney Disease. So essentially the kidneys are made of roughly 1 million filtering units. And the job of these filtering units is that you basically have the blood flowing through them, and they filter the blood, and all of the toxic chemicals and waste from the body gets chucked out into the wee or into the urine. Now, when you put together the filtration rate of all of these units, you can call it the glomerular filtration rate, and you can measure it as mils per minute. A lot of people find this concept really confusing, and actually most of us like to think of it as a percentage, and that's what I use in my clinic when I'm talking to people about chronic kidney disease. And you can divide the filtration rate, depending on how well it's your kidneys are filtering, into 5 different stages of chronic kidney disease. Stage more than or equal to 90% is stage 1 or normal. Less than 15% is end-stage kidney disease, and these are people that are thinking about dialysis and transplantation. So all of these nephrons are lined by these special, highly specialized cells. So you've got the cells on either side, and here's the space where the blood flows. Now, in polycystic kidney disease, you get a mutation or a mistake in the DNA, which causes 2 main things. The first thing is that these cells start to multiply uncontrollably. And the second thing is that they lose their sense of direction. So rather than growing in this direction, they multiply in this direction. And you can see that they're forming like a little sac or cystic structure. Now, at the same time, a lot of fluid gets put in this little space, the cystic fluid. And when it reaches a critical size, it just breaks off from the rest of the nephron and becomes an independent fluid-filled sac called a cyst, which continues to grow through more fluid in here, more cells multiplying into this sac-like structure. Now, this is quite a busy diagram, but it actually is a really excellent summary of what happens in polycystic kidney disease. So for a very long time, so probably the first 40 years of life, your kidney function, your glomerular filtration rate is pretty much maintained at a normal level. But actually, what's happening inside the kidneys is very different. So along come these cysts that are developing, and they continue to increase in both number and size. Now, these cysts, you can start to see, are squashing the normal kidney tissue. So what happens is that the normal kidney tissue that's left over after the cysts have caused lots of damage just overcompensate by filtering that bit more. So that's called hyperfiltration. But then it gets to a critical point where a lot of the normal kidney tissue has been replaced by cysts, which are causing lots of squashing and damaging, and they can't compensate anymore. And at that point where you've got not enough normal kidney tissue to compensate for all these cysts, kidney function starts to drop, and that's the point at which people reach kidney failure and need dialysis and transplant or kidney replacement therapy more generally. So what do we need? Well, we need treatments that are going to slow or stop the cysts growing and therefore the rate at which the kidney function goes down. So if you had to make a list of what things are really important for new treatments, well, effective, of course, it would be good if they worked and we could demonstrate that they worked. Low cost, perhaps the government and the NHS care about that more than we do. Treatments that are safe with very few side effects. Treatments that you could introduce early before permanent kidney damage. And if you look at this diagram that I've showed you here, really where you want to be introducing this treatment is at this kind of early stage, rather than waiting until all of this damage has happened before you start treatments that are going to slow the kidney growth, cyst growth. You want something that's easy to take, preferably a tablet, preferably once a day, and doesn't interact with any of your other tablets. If anybody can think of any others, happy. So in comes metformin. So metformin is a group of medicines called biguanides, and they come from a plant called French lilac, and I think you'll agree it looks very pretty. There are 150 million people worldwide that take metformin, and it's mainly used for diabetes and pre-diabetes, off license for polycystic ovaries, but there are a lot of people around the world that are using it. We know that it's safe, we know that it's low cost, and we know that it's widely available. So just to touch on the side effects of metformin, so the main side effects are gastrointestinal and in particular diarrhea. So around 30% of people who take metformin will have gastrointestinal side effects, particularly diarrhea. It usually disappears within a couple of months of taking the medication. And if you give the once daily formula or the slow release once daily formula, these symptoms are much better because it's more slowly released into the kind of bloodstream. Now, commonly, about 6% of people also get vitamin B12 deficiency. Interestingly, not many people actually monitor patients on metformin vitamin B12 deficiency, but we certainly will be in the trial. And then the rarer things like lactic acidosis, liver function abnormalities, and skin reactions. So what has metformin got to do with polycystic kidney disease? Well, metformin works on two very clever mechanisms. So the first thing it does is that all the signals that are driving these cells to multiply, it blocks them. And the signals that are driving more cystic fluid to be formed and to kind of be pushed inside this cystic space are also blocked. So in this way, theoretically, it should slow cyst growth. So the way you normally determine these mechanisms is, or how it works or what signals it affects, is to work out what it does in animal models. And so you've got these embryonic kidneys. I think these are from mice, actually. And so here you've got the control. So this is an embryonic mouse kidney that doesn't get anything other than dummy drug. And this one gets metformin. And you can see the one with metformin has less cysts. Again, metformin, less cysts than the vehicle, perhaps not so clear. But you'll be happy to know that there have also been a number of studies in people with polycystic kidney disease. Now, these are what we call feasibility studies. Now, the point of a feasibility study is not that it's going to answer your main question, but that it's going to show you whether it's possible for you to do a trial to answer your main question. So there are actually two studies in the USA. So one recruited, so TAME-PKD, again, the sexy study name, recruited 96 patients. And they were divided up into two groups. One group was given metformin and the other was given the dummy placebo. And in terms of their criteria, they wanted people with PKD who were between the ages of 18 to 16 and had the glomerular filtration rate that was above 50%. The Denver study also did the same, and pretty similar actually criteria, but they only recruited 50 and that was their target. And both these studies showed that it was safe for people with polycystic kidney disease to take metformin and that they could tolerate the dose and they did that by measuring how many people were still taking the tablet regularly at the end of the study, and it was more than 90% for both. So that tells us that a kind of study, a kind of definitive study is possible. So what's the hypothesis that IMPEDE-PKD is going to be testing? So does taking a metformin tablet daily compared to placebo, the dummy drug, slow the rate at which cysts grow and kidney function decline in people with polycystic kidney disease? So I'm going to talk through the eligibility criteria on the next slide, but I thought it would be just quite nice to visually see what the main kind of trial schematic is. So people with polycystic kidney disease who fulfill the eligibility criteria will then go into something called a run-in phase. That's where everybody that's recruited into the trial gets metformin. And the way we do it is that we start at the lowest dose and then we increase the dose every 2 weeks. And by doing that kind of slow, small kind of increase, it's more likely that people will tolerate that dose or tolerate the maximum dose. And we find the dose that each person is able to tolerate. Some people might not tolerate the higher doses. That's fine. They can go back to the dose that they can tolerate. And it gives them a bit of time for anybody who's got those side effects for them to kind of resolve. So then once you've completed the 12 weeks, everybody who's successfully completed the 12 weeks of taking the metformin every day and happy to proceed can then be randomly allocated. So you get a 50-50 chance of being allocated to either metformin or placebo, and you're followed up over 2 years, and the tablet has to be taken every day. At the end of the study, we collect all the data and analyze it. So this was a lovely diagram that Megan has done for our participant information sheet, which I think kind of summarizes things in a bit more detail, but is really nice and clear. So the first visit that you'll have is a screening visit. So you come to hospital, we tell you all about the study. If you're happy to go ahead, you sign a consent form, and then you have your first study assessments and you start taking the metformin. Now, during that 12-week run-in period where everybody is taking the metformin, you've got 5 reviews. So 3 of them will be over the telephone and 2 of them will be face-to-face. And we've tried to really reduce the burden of people coming into hospital by keeping as many of them as possible and as safe as phone calls. Now, by week 10, most people will have found the right dose that's for them. Then at week 12, you'll be randomly assigned to either the placebo or the metformin. And you have 1 hospital visit after the run-in phase. And then you start taking whichever trial medication you've been allocated. Now, it's really important to say at this stage that as a participant, you won't know what medication you're taking. The study team also do not know what medication you're taking. So that's called being blinded. So it's double blind, which means the research team and the participant don't know who's taking what. Obviously, if at any point during the study there are any safety concerns or a patient is unwell and we need to unblind, that's absolutely fine. It happens very quickly. There's no concerns there. So then there's the 2-year treatment period. You get 6 reviews. Month 1 is a phone call, and then face-to-face at 3, 6, 12, 18, and 24 months. And again, they're reasonably well spaced out, and we're going to try our best for these to come to sort of coincide with your normal clinic appointments, so you're not having to come back backwards and forwards too much in between your normal clinic appointments, because obviously, people have lives. So in terms of each visit, so the purpose really is to make sure that you're okay, see how you're getting on with the study, see if you've got any concerns, see if anything's going particularly well, if you've got any feedback, that always works. So physical examination, so your height, your weight, your blood pressure, we're very interested in, obviously, because PKD affects blood pressure. They may need to do a heart or listen to your lungs or have a feel of your tummy, fluid status, and a pregnancy test. Medication review, so it's important to let us know if you've started or stopped any medications, or if you're taking anything over the counter that's not prescribed. In terms of blood tests, they'll be checking your kidney function, because that's our outcome, and liver function, your blood sugars. Now, metformin increases your insulin sensitivity, but it shouldn't lower your blood sugar, but we will be monitoring it for safety anyway, your blood count and your vitamin B12 levels. And then we do urine tests to look at protein leak and any infections. And then questionnaires, which focus on quality of life, pain, which I'll go into in a bit more detail. And then we've got a gastrointestinal symptom questionnaire, and that's really helpful to let us know how you're getting on with the metformin from a side effect point of view. So who is going to be eligible? So people with polycystic kidney disease who are between the ages of 18 to 70 years old, and the filtration rate of more than 38%, but less than 90%. And you have to have evidence of either you're at risk of disease progression, based on the fact that you've got large kidneys, or you've got active disease progression, either because your kidneys are growing really fast or your kidney function is declining really fast. Now, this is really important. In fact, why don't I kind of explain this bit a little bit more? So if I go back to the diagram that I showed you here, the reason we're looking for people who have big kidneys or have active disease progression is because if you take people with a normal kidney function in your study and you're measuring kidney function, if you take people in your study at this stage, not very much will change and your study will be negative. And so what you want to do is catch people at this stage who are at risk of progression and show that you can slow it down. So rather than that, do that. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention in terms of eligibility criteria is tolvaptan. So you can, of course, be included in the study in tolvaptan, and this was something that the ethics committee felt was really important, and so did we. We don't want to deprive anybody of a treatment that we know works, and it wouldn't be fair and it wouldn't be ethical. So if you're on tolvaptan and you're on a stable dose for 3 months, then absolutely. The reason we wouldn't stop people, but the reason we don't want people stopping and starting tolvaptan during the study is because it can affect your kidney function. And so if it affects your kidney function during the study, it can affect the results of the data that we're collecting. So ideally, people who are on tolvaptan on a stable dose. So who's not eligible? People who have diabetes, people who've got poorly controlled blood pressure, heart failure, liver disease that's not polycystic liver disease, because we know that lots of people who have polycystic kidney disease have polycystic livers, but it's not a problem in terms of their kidney function usually. People who've already reached end-stage kidney disease and have dialysis or a kidney transplant, just because it's too late really in the process. Pregnancy and breastfeeding. Now, metformin is perfectly safe in women that are pregnant and breastfeeding. It is given in pregnancy. The reason we, again, excluded people who are pregnant is because pregnancy affects your kidney function because of the physiological changes that happen. So it increases your kidney function at certain points in the pregnancy, presumably to kind of provide more blood supply to the baby. So it would affect the results that we're collecting. So it's not because metformin is not safe, it's because pregnancy affects your kidney function in various ways because of how the physiology changes during pregnancy, essentially. And then finally, if you're participating in another study that involves taking another medicine, basically. So what are we measuring? What is our primary outcome that we're interested in? That's the rate of kidney function decline. And we're going to compare the rate between the metformin group and the placebo group. Now, what do we actually want to see? What would be a perfect study? So if I tell you that this is your kidney function on this, or this is kidney function on this side, so the glomerular filtration rate, Up here is more than 90%, and then as you go down, that's the kidney function declining. And then here on the x-axis, this is the time in years, decades. So in the metformin group, what we would hope to see is the rate at which your kidney function goes down is significantly slowed, and people either don't reach end-stage kidney disease or reach it much, much later. And then in the placebo group, this is what would normally happen if you did nothing, so the kidney function would decline quite rapidly. So this is what we'd like to see if metformin does work. Now, in terms of the secondary outcome, pain is one of those things that's been really, really important to patients with polycystic kidney disease. This is something that you have told us time and time again. 60% of people live with pain, and if you have polycystic kidney disease, it can be quite debilitating. It can affect your work, your relationships, your finances, your mood, and so our secondary outcome will look at whether metformin, through reducing the rate at which cysts grow, can affect your pain severity and also how much pain relief people are using. Now, we're measuring pain using the APAT. So this is the ADPKD pain assessment tool. Now, myself and Dr. Fayaz and a lovely group of 12 patients from the PKD Charity, along with researchers and pain experts, all came together and formed a working group. And what we did is we gained lots of information from people with lived experience of what it feels like day to day to be coping with PKD pain. And we developed something called the APAT, which is short for ADPKD Pain Assessment Tool. And what we essentially determined is what is important to people when you're measuring pain. And it was all these things. People wanted us to measure how intense the pain was, how severe it was, what it felt like, how frequently it happened, where was it affecting, what pain relief worked and what didn't, but also how it was affecting them, both physically, emotionally, and how they felt about their health generally. Now, this is a body map of which we're going to be using to collect the site of where pain is. So what we want people to do on this is let us know exactly where their pains are. Now, you might say to me, well, why do you want to collect whole body pain? Why don't you just collect how much kidney pain people are having? And what we, from our previous kind of data when we used the APAT initially in a small group of patients, what we realised is that it's never just about having kidney pain. So people who have very large kidneys also have a lot of back pain, they have a lot of neck pain, they get a lot of arthritis in their knees, and that's because they're carrying a lot of weight around here, around their tummy. And it affects your joints, it affects your neck, it affects your spine, it affects your knees. And it's really hard to kind of ignore that pain because that's part of the pain process. So we want to collect all of the pain and see if there are any specific patterns. And actually our first kind of look at this with 50 patients, the most common area of pain for people with polycystic kidney disease was in this area here at the back, which you can kind of understand. In terms of pain severity, so we're looking at how severe pain has been, your average pain all over the last 14 days, using a scale where 0 is no pain, 10 is very severe pain. And then we do collect kidney pain. We collect data on dull kidney pain, sharp kidney pain, fullness, and there's a scale of 5 things: none, mild, moderate, substantial, and then how frequently it happens. I also wanted to mention pain relief because very few of the pain assessments tools look at pain relief. And actually, it is really important to look at what people are taking, what dose and frequency, because that gives you an idea of what the burden of pain relief is. Is somebody just having the occasional paracetamol? Is their pain so severe that they're having incredibly high doses of morphine? do we know that morphine works for polycystic kidney disease pain? The other thing that we really, really want to collect, because a lot of people do this, and again, it's very poorly collected, is what things people use over the counter, what kind of physical things like hot and cold presses, exercise, TENS machines, physiotherapy, yoga, and with all of these things, what is the perceived pain relief? So 0% being no relief, 100% being complete relief, because you can imagine a scenario where people are having really strong pain relief like morphine, and it's, you know, it's not really making a difference. I'm getting 10% pain relief. So it's helpful to know that, because it means that we need to look at other ways of addressing pain. So with studies in kidney disease generally, in order to be able to do a big study that answers the important question about kidney function, it's often not enough to recruit from one country. And if you look at the Tempo 3-4 study, I think it recruited from over 20, perhaps even 30 countries around the world. Now, we are working very closely with Australia. So Australia and New Zealand are in the process. So Australia is in the process of following up their patients. So they've finished all of their recruitment. New Zealand is still recruiting. The UK have started recruiting. And there are countries in Europe and USA who are still applying for funding. But essentially what we need is nearly 1,200 PKD patients or people with PKD from around the world. 300 of these are going to be recruited from the UK, and Megan has done a fantastic job, and we've worked with over 30 centres. So we've got 5 centres that are now open to recruitment. So Plymouth, Exeter, I think Bradford, Sheffield, and Devon. And then all of the rest of these are in the process of doing the paperwork and getting the training. And I'm terrible at maths, so I'm not going to point it in any specific direction. So these are the contact information, is the contact information for the study. Megan is usually very proactive and very quick to answer. So if you're interested or you've got some more questions, you know, definitely email us and let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And I hope I haven't talked for too long. I've left enough space for questions.
Thank you, Ragda, for a very informative session. I knew some of this stuff, but it was actually great to hear it straight from the horse's mouth there. It was really, really good. Nice and clear for us to understand what the involvement is. I see there's a little flurry of questions that have come in. Would you like one of the team to read them out and just plod our way through them there?
Yes, please.
Yes, in no particular order. Someone has asked, can metformin be used to slow the growth of cysts in the liver and pancreas?
Good question. The answer is nobody knows. Possibly in the liver, but nobody knows, and nobody has looked at that before. I guess it would be quite interesting if we could do some imaging in the study to look at the liver and the kidneys. I think the main problem with using imaging is actually cost, and that's why you know, we focused on kidney function. That's certainly what the funding body has wanted us to focus on. But it would be an interesting study if we had plenty of money to do that.
Now, there's quite a few questions have come in relating to criteria, so I'm going to just run through them and block them all together. Is the 38 EGFR a fixed threshold?
Yes. And the reason we've chosen, we debated this a lot. The reason we've chosen 38 is because if your kidney function drops below 30, you're not allowed to have metformin, it's not safe. And so we didn't want to push the threshold down too low, because then we'd have to exclude people during the study if their kidney function naturally dropped. And and we didn't want to put it too high because then we'd end up excluding too many people.
And someone else has asked, why have you excluded heart failure?
So the main reason for excluding people with heart failure is, again, they tend to have different comorbidities, and it's very hard to look at kidney function in people with heart failure because they get kidney failure related to the heart failure and the medication that they take for heart failure. So it would make it difficult to measure kidney function and know whether it was improving or getting worse because of the metformin or because of their heart failure.
Perfect. And someone's pre-diabetic, would that be an issue?
So diabetes is definitely an exclusion. Pre-diabetes, I think, wouldn't be, so long as they weren't taking metformin already.
Mm-hmm. And someone else's EGFR estimated at 83. Can they be on the trial?
They can if they've got big kidneys or they've got evidence that their kidney function is coming down. So big kidneys would be more than 16 centimetres.
And again, about the thresholds of EGFR, is 93 a fixed threshold at the upper limit?
It's got to be less than 90. It's got to be less than 90.
Perfect. And that is the ones I've picked out there. I don't know if one of my colleagues has had a look through and has perhaps grouped some more questions. I'll hand it over to another team member if they'd like to see.
Hi, Susan, can you hear me?
Yes, Jane, thanks for coming in there and thanks for looking through those cute questions that are coming in quite rapidly.
There's a fairly common question here. Why does it take so long in the UK? I think what they mean by this is, why did clinical trials take so long?
Yeah, but so I guess the setup takes a very long time, and I don't mind telling you that we applied for this a few years ago and we didn't get funded, and we applied again. So the funding process takes a good sort of 6 to 8 months, and then you get the decision, and then there's a lot of time and effort that goes into the regulatory approvals, and that all takes time, and then you've got to basically do what Megan is doing at the moment, which is to train all the centres to get each centre up to kind of all the regulatory paperwork and bits. It takes a very long time. But we know that it can be done quicker because it was done quicker when COVID was around and the COVID trials were coming out, and that certainly accelerated things very quickly in terms of vaccine development.
Thanks. Apologies if this has been answered in the Q&A and I've missed it. What are the expectations with regard to the effect of metformin relative to tolvaptan, and can both drugs be compounded?
I think that's an excellent question. I think they're likely to be additive. So I guess what I'm saying is that because they work on slightly different cystic signals, it's likely that the combination of both is going to be better than one or the other. So that's what we're expecting, that actually if you add metformin to tolvaptan, that you might get even better protection.
Right. And I've noticed there's a few questions come through there that are relating to local clinics. One of them being, would I already need to be treated at one of the centres, or is it easy enough being able to travel to another one? So maybe not your usual clinic, but if you're willing to travel a further afield, would you be eligible to participate?
Got that one to Megan.
So you would have to be seen by one of the hospitals that are taking part in the study. But just because someone's not taking part at the moment, it doesn't mean that there's not a chance for them to do so. So if you're not on our list, we would say speak to your consultant, and then that might get them interested in taking part.
And that in itself answers what question in the chat there. There's nothing in Central Scotland. Will this be changed?
We're a little bit restricted on sites in Scotland that can take part, because we have some committees have to keep an eye on us, make sure everything's going okay, and they have to be independent of the trial, and that's where a lot of those people are based. So some Scottish sites are taking part, but I know Edinburgh definitely can't, and Dundee can't.
That's lovely. And even just being able to understand that is helpful for our community.
Well, Glasgow, mix them up. Glasgow can't, but Edinburgh can. Sorry.
Okay. And we've got a truly international following tonight. We've got someone who's actually joined us from South Africa. Is there any chance they could join the study from here? I assume you have to be a resident within the UK to participate.
Yeah, you would, yeah.
Yeah. Jane or Alison or Audrey?
Yeah.
Can
I just say, somebody's asked if I meet the eligibility criteria, what do I actually do to see if I can get onto the trial? Just really, really simple. What if I meet the eligibility criteria, what should I do?
Megan.
So we've got like our map which shows a list of sites. So I would speak to the consultant at your next appointment, so you can ask them about research opportunities and specifically mention IMPEDE-PKD, and either they'll know about us and they'll be able to help you, or they'll be able to get in touch if they're interested in the hospital taking part.
We've been very active and advertised and spoken to a lot of centres and presented at sort of study groups where a lot of the PKD community comes. So we've tried quite hard, haven't we, Megan, to kind of make sure that everybody knows that we're up and running and that we're looking for centres. So we're always very welcoming of new centres.
We've got quite a few questions about why aren't there more clinical trials? Why is everything so slow? Why aren't there treatments ready? I know, being part of the as working PKD Charity, working with KI UK, and Ragada, you're a part of that as well for the PKD partnership. It really is an area that a lot of people in the world of PKD are coming together to try and really boost how we can make more clinical trials happen. And that's one of the key objectives of the PKD partnership. And we're hoping to be able to update you more as we go along with that project and the things that we're trying to do. It is so complex to get effective trials in the UK for PKD, and we're all trying as a community to do everything we can to make things better and quicker, and put some resources in to make that happen, because it's hard to do. It's very hard to do.
And I think to add to that, as Alison was saying, collaboration is really important. So working with other centres, working with other countries to be able to deliver the big trials that are going to answer the questions that we need to answer, really.
Yeah.
We're moving quickly on from participation to results. Someone's asking, what is the timeline for expected published results?
Good question. So in terms of the pain data, I think that we should be able to publish once the UK has finished with that. But we have to wait for everybody in the trial, so all the other countries, to also recruit so that we can answer the question. At the moment, we are amongst so basically the UK, India, New Zealand, and Australia are up and running, or just about to get started up and running, but we're still waiting for Italy and the USA to get their funding. So I think, it's definitely going to be years, and I would think probably 5+. But that's not a long time for a clinical trial. If you look back at a lot of the other clinical trials, they can take up to 10 years. You're right, it is a slow process, but that's what it takes to answer questions.
Am I right in saying, Ragada, because this drug is widely used for other conditions, that should, if it is shown to be effective in reducing things, that could help with the statutory process of getting it, if it really shows that it has a massive impact because it's used in other places, it should make it easier for it to go through the regulatory process, possibly.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the fact that you're right, it's low cost and it's got a very safe side effect profile. When we put in for our funding application, we asked them if they wanted us to do an economic analysis to demonstrate that it was good value for money, and they said don't even bother, because if you can show that
Yeah.
it works, it's going to be a no-brainer that it's going to be value for money.
And there's a question here that's certainly caught my eye and got my attention. Does participating in a clinical trial affect life or travel insurance, etc.?
So I was like, too easy to answer then. It might do, basically. So what we would say is patients should check in with their insurance providers just to see if it does have an impact. And there is a specific section on our information sheet that talks about that, because it's, I think, quite common for people.
This is an interesting question. What about beyond the end of the trial? Do people who have received the drug keep getting it, or does it all come to a halt at the end of the 2 years?
So it would come to a halt at the end of the 2 years, because there's no longer any monitoring. But if it was shown that the drug did work, then it would be prescribed. But obviously, until we've analysed the results and seen what it actually does and made sure that it's safe and that it does work, we wouldn't be able to tell people to keep taking it at the end of the study. So it would come to a halt. Yeah.
And a common thing again is, how do I try to get onto the trial? Will they be opened in the different parts of the country? So we had that lovely map. And if persons obviously doesn't live close to one of the existing 5 trial centres that are recruiting currently, how would they get involved when the others start to recruit?
So it's sort of a piecemeal process, basically. So we're trying to open 30 hospitals as quickly as I can do it, and they're willing to do it, basically. So as and when those the additional sites that are working through the setup process at the moment, as and when they open, they're probably already looking for people now, getting them on a list that they can start to approach as soon as I've given them the green light. So just keep speaking to your consultants, and if they're already involved, they'll be able to tell you, or they'll be in touch to find you and recruit you if you're eligible, and as soon as they're open.
And Megan, can they join the trial if they're not registered at that hospital?
So if they're under the care of another hospital, it's and that hospital doesn't want to take part, it's tricky, because it is a lot of involvement for the sites and the hospital staff to be able to do it. So if there's another hospital that they could get referred to for their care for that, then if that's an option, that's something to explore. But otherwise, it is a local decision on if the hospital take part or not. But the more the merrier from our point of view.
Can I ask one? And it's one that's quite specific to an individual, but I think it's an interesting question. Somebody's asked, I've recently been diagnosed with osteoarthritis in my right big toe and have been offered a cortisone injection. However, my renal doctor said this may impact me potentially getting into the trial. Is this the case, or am I okay to get a cortisone injection? My kidneys are far more important than my toe. Thanks. Which
it's more steroids, tablet steroids, and particularly high dose steroids that can affect the metformin, and also your risk of developing things like diabetes. So a localized injection into a big toe is not going to be absorbed enough into the blood to make any difference. So no, you'd be fine.
That's great. Thank you, Ragada. Questions keep coming. We're just trying to find some. There's lots of ones that are quite similar to ones we've already asked.
Yes.
A lot of people are really, really hoping and got their fingers crossed for a London site coming on board.
Yeah. And quite a little nice one here. You mentioned it as a blind trial, so we don't know if you're taking metformin or a placebo. Someone's asking, do you find out whether you've been in metformin or a placebo, and if so, at what stage?
Do you want me to do that, Ragda? Yep. So then you get a letter at the end of the study, not when you finished in the study. It's when the UK trial is finished as a whole. We'll write to all of the participants and say you were in this group, or which group you were in, so you can have those discussions, and you know what you received.
Thank you.
We've got a member of the audience who has raised their hand, Alan. Now, I don't know if you've managed to type your question. No, Alan keeps raising his hand. Alan, can you type your question into the Q&A?
I guess the other thing to say, just on typing his question, is that we would also aim to do a kind of webinar like this to present the results to everybody, to make sure that, you know, it's your trial and any results, definitely we would make sure that you were kind of shared as well.
Another one that's caught my attention is we know many of our community have high blood pressure, elevated blood pressure. Someone's saying, my blood pressure goes up and down, even though I'm on medication. Would I be excluded?
No. So ideally, we would want you to have well-controlled blood pressure. Blood pressure generally will vary throughout the day based on what you're doing and how stressed you are, etc. But what we don't want is people with very, very high or dangerously high blood pressure, because it's not safe, not because metformin is dangerous, but it's not safe to be in a study, and also it increases the rate at which your kidney function goes down if you've got poorly controlled blood pressure. So you wouldn't be excluded. What we do is perhaps spend some time at the beginning before, you know, during that run-in, even just optimizing your blood pressure with more tablets.
Somebody's asking as well. So you've got the criteria about what people